Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Banter. I have Rick and Tony here with me. Rick has a power outage, so if he's looking a little dark on the screen, that it should explain it. Okay, let's jump right into the news. This has been a crazy week, as I think we all could have anticipated. First and foremost, we have the executive order signed by Donald Trump. It is not a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I'll just say that. It's a digital asset stockpile that has been proposed to be studied by a working group. So not quite the news, but some Bitcoiners are choosing to celebrate it as though it's the same thing. Tony, why don't you take this one first? What's your reaction?
Bullish, very bullish. And the reason for that is that I know Donald Trump is a businessman at heart, right? And he's the type of person that usually follows up on everything that he says. It's never failed in the past, at least, for the most part. He's done pretty much everything he said he was set out to do. He said he was going to free Ross on day one. Okay, it wasn't exactly day one, but it wasn't a week later. It was just the very next day. So now he set the framework to make America the number one hub for Bitcoin and crypto. So it's not the strategic reserve announcement, specifically, but this is a new sheriff. So he's laying out the groundwork, for that vision, and I expect him to follow through with it. He's got a good team on his hand, and whether they push out crypto and Bitcoin at first at the same time for whatever reasons it may be, the Bitcoin side of it will no longer be under attack, and eventually, the tech will prove itself and will win, overtake everything else, because fiat, everybody who understands money understand that it's going nowhere, and so you can play these gambling games for a little while, but sooner or later, it will bite you, and all roads lead to Bitcoin in proper self-custody. So I'm very bullish on this. It's very exciting to see this. I hope nothing unexpected shows up. I don't foresee what could possibly ruin this, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I'm happy he's doing it.
Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, first off, I'll apologize if you can't see me because we've had a power cut here. I'm unfortunately back in the UK, and as you guys know, like, nothing works here, right? So I can only assume it's too windy for the wind turbines or some other nonsense, right? But yeah, this crypto reserve digital asset stockpile thing. Oh man, I kind of hope I don't sound like a bit of a Debbie Downer on this, but if I'm really brutally honest, I don't think I care. I really don't think that I care what any government or Donald Trump or anyone else is doing, right? I actually bemoan a little bit that I have to go and read all of this kind of asinine documentation about crypto and regulations and all this sort of stuff. I mean, first of all, a digital asset stockpile kind of strongly suggests that, well, first, what it isn't is a commitment to buy Bitcoin, right? As far as I can interpret it at the moment, and there's a lot of noise out there, it's more a case of they will keep hold of any seized cryptocurrencies that they get from heists or whatever, right? So, I know there's a lot of excitement around there about, the US is going to buy loads of Bitcoin and pump my bags. But, I don't know if I'd be expecting that, like, right around the corner. I've read that the working group here, they've actually got to file a report within 180 days of, whatever they plan to do or something. That's a long time, 6 months. So, maybe everyone's kind of excited, hoping for these big green candles, but, I would just maybe temper that a little bit and don't do anything stupid, like open some leveraged longs and get too hyped up. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about crypto renaissance and capital of crypto, and I don't know what I make of that. It's kind of funny. Like, I've seen a lot of people get wrecked by crypto. I've never seen a nation state get wrecked by crypto. So I don't know. The podcast episodes might get really interesting over the next 12 to 18 months. I don't know. If they buy a whole load of XRP, then I'd be quite bearish on that stockpile. I don't know what to tell you. And okay, look, I think there's some things to celebrate, right? Like, I don't want to be totally negative about it. You know, they're saying we're going to support your rights to self-custody. Love that. We're going to be happy for people to mine Bitcoin and stuff like that. Again, I love that. But, you know, there's lines in there like, we're going to protect your individual rights. Well, Bitcoin is already doing that, right? Bitcoin protects my individual rights. The last time I checked, the only thing the government has ever done during my life is erode my individual rights. So you can write that on a piece of paper. I'd rather trust the code than something that a politician says. And then they talk about things like, we're going to promote innovation. Well, guys, you're pretty late to the party. Most of the innovation happened about 16 years ago. Like, where have you been? And that's not to say that Bitcoin is static, right? It'll keep changing and evolving. But it's certainly not going to be because the government has helped. When does the government innovate on anything? The best way for a government to support innovation is to be quiet, keep looking after menial services, and get the hell out of the way. There was a couple of things in there that just made me chuckle, right? Like they said, we're going to have also regulatory oversight. And I'm thinking, you guys, you don't realize how defunct you are. The regulatory oversight is the protocol, right? The protocol rules, no one can break them, even you. That's the oversight sorted. You're surplus to requirements. Then there was stuff about they're going to regulate the issuance of cryptocurrencies. Well, all right, that's a major red flag, right? Because we know what controls the issuance of Bitcoin, and it's nobody. So, it worries me that like this is opening the door to launching a load of nonsense. And the people I fear for are the people who are going to get dragged in the wrong direction by this, because it is kind of, supporting crypto and other projects. So for me, I maybe I'm a bit like tired of this news now, because it's everyone's super excited. The US is going to buy Bitcoin, but that's not what any of this documentation says. I think it's likely to happen in the fullness of time, but I don't care. I don't care what the government does. Like, Bitcoin is going to do what it's going to do, regardless of whether they support it or not. And I would just like to take the time to remind people that we're here to separate money and state, right? Like, stop waiting for permission from the government to be free, and just be free, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents. It's definitely not bad news, but I'm not like throwing a party tonight, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's a bit expected though, no? I mean, what did you expect the government to come out and say? Okay, guys, let's pack it up. Bitcoin's here, we're out. It's just not going to happen that way. But like you said, it is a free market. So they're going to do whatever they think makes sense, especially with regards to the dollar. They do specifically mention in that thing, something about strengthening the dollar. They have to say this. Can you imagine if they announce tomorrow, all right, that's it, everything turns Bitcoin in 24 hours, what kind of mayhem that'll cause worldwide? Ultimately, that's what's going to happen anyhow. Let the free market do whatever it wants. If it wants to gamble, let it gamble. It has to get trekked to learn. There is no other way. You can sit here and preach all day long. Some people will still ignore you. So it's a moot point. So let them do whatever they have to do. Ultimately, we all know all roads are going to lead to Bitcoin, because it's the only neutral ground that everyone, every living soul can trust, including governments. None of these guys trust each other. They are not going to settle on anything else. I can assure you of this. So as long as he gets out of the way, which I genuinely believe he will, eventually even they will understand that the separation of money and state is inevitable. So they have to keep themselves relevant in some way, shape, or form. They're not going to opt out tomorrow, even though many people would love that. But it's just not going to happen. Let's just be realistic here.
Well, that's, I guess, why I kind of agree with you, Tony, is that's why I just don't care. I really don't care what Trump does, or any government. Like, it
doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
It
doesn't matter. Absolutely. It doesn't matter. But you just have to let them play out the way they're still making decisions. So let them make these decisions. Ultimately, 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2, no matter what anybody says.
Yeah, I think, Rick, I think I agree with everything you said. Where I really agree with Tony too, though, is bullishness on it. not because we should be seeking government permission and regulatory clarity, but there are a lot of rule followers out there who aren't going to go take self-sovereignty and, grab it by the horns and move forward that way. They're waiting for the government to give them the green light. And so I think from a dollar exchange rate perspective, this is very bullish for Bitcoin, because I think people are going to get, all the rule followers at least, are going to get the clarity that they've been seeking, while the rest of us have just been stacking sats and ignoring the government for a long, long time. But yeah, there are no teeth to this yet, right? Like, there isn't regulatory clarity. There isn't a strategic reserve. There isn't any of these things that they're effectively investigating this, looking into it, and they're going to write a report. It could take some time to get back to it. And then after 180 days, who knows how much longer to act on it if they do, right? Like, there's nothing is binding here. This is effectively an executive order for a working group to look into it. And it could end up being a bunch of shitcoins. We're going to talk about XRP here in a minute. So time will tell. But I think the thing for me is the people on Twitter who are like cheering this is like, this is like the Bitcoin is a digital asset. So it is a Bitcoin reserve. It's like, there is no reserve. Like, that literally isn't what happened. So, I mean, you can keep patting yourself on the back for winning, but like you haven't yet. So I think that's what's maybe the most annoying. Let's talk about XRP. My beloved XRP, right, Rick? So Pierre Richard. So I was going through Twitter last night, and 80% of my feed was Pierre Richard just dumping on XRP. And he basically said, I could have pulled so many of his tweets, but he said the executive order prohibits agencies from undertaking any actions to establish, issue, or promote central bank digital currencies. Oof, Ripple XRP wrecked. And of course, he tagged Brad Garlinghouse. So XRP is like, the more I read, actually, I learned a lot about XRP last night. I've just ignored it my entire Bitcoin journey. But talk about a shitcoin. I mean, this is unreal. I guess the question will be, does the sort of crypto lobby, the Brad Garlinghouses of the world, have the do they have the power and the money behind it to somehow, meander into a strategic reserve to the extent that it's developed? Rick, I'll let you run with this one first.
Well, like Michael, we need to have a word at some point, right? You keep trying to turn this into an XRP podcast, but man, listen, we're not going to buy your bags, man. I'm really sorry to say, but oh yeah, all right, XRP. I mean, it's like a bad smell that just never goes away. I mean, to be fair, it's an impressive scam. The way that coin has held on for so long is remarkable, because it's pre-mined centralized trash. And the way that Ripple has really tried to stay relevant is it was announced partnerships, right? We're going to help the banks like send money between each other, and then they announce partnerships. But if you look into those partnerships, typically like Ripple have paid for those partnerships by dumping XRP on XRP holders. Then the announcement comes up and the price of XRP goes up, and then they dump some more of their pre-mined shitcoin, and it just goes round and round and round again. And I think their whole approach has kind of been like they were making this play on governments wanting to launch CBDCs and using XRP as the rails for it. So yeah, that's one great thing that came out of the executive order, is this kind of blocking the CBDC route, and it must be bad news for Brad and for yourself, Michael. I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, look, XRP has always been a joke. Imagine investing in a coin where its whole sort of use case is based upon making banks more efficient. When Bitcoin is around and says, well, no, we're making banks obsolete, it's really kind of backwards. It's really stupid. Most people are going to get wrecked by it. And I'm sure Brad Garlinghouse is maybe not having the best day ever today, because hopefully we will get an XRP CBDC.
Yeah, I think the problem is the CBDC is defined in the executive order, and it's a pretty broad definition, to be fair. I mean, it would exclude many things that a CBDC could be. That said, it wouldn't be the first time that the federal government just rolled over something, steamrolled something that they've established as law or a constitutional amendment and said, well, not, we're going to kind of change how we look at this. And a CBDC is still possible. But yeah, of course, it's better to have language in there saying it's not allowed. So there's potentially future legal ground to stand on in fighting that. And maybe the Supreme Court would come in handy in that situation. Tony, what do you think about the XRP debacle?
XRP, man, it's one of the most corrupt organizations, the world has ever seen. These guys were 100% banking on becoming like the new platform for the monetary system, that central bank digital currency. That's their entire premise was based on that. This is why they were lobbying and campaigning, spending millions of dollars trying to, destroy Bitcoin over the last God knows how many years. And they failed spectacularly with each and every single one of them. People that believe in XRP are, people that don't understand money and somehow, live under the assumption that government is always going to be in charge of the money. And so since these guys are attached to the government and the big banks and they're important players, well, then, if I buy some of their product, I'm going to become rich because of it. They're not thinking, they understand nothing. All they see is, that wet dream of becoming a millionaire from nothing. And so when that doesn't materialize, and which it won't, because Donald Trump just torpedoed that dream entirely with what he just put out, they're going to lose their money, just like any other altcoin out there. You have, the illusion of easy gains, but the reality is it's fast losses. And so I expect nothing different from this.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on the executive order is the term digital assets to me provides an opportunity for the U.S. government to also be the buyer of last resort for monkey JPEGs. So if you're busy sitting there arguing about which cryptocurrency is going to be included in a potential reserve, just keep in mind ordinals, NFTs, it's all on the table apparently, because those are all digital assets, right? Alrighty, next we've got China, the clown of the week. So I'm assuming this is true. I've seen this in a couple of places. China sold its entire 194,000 Bitcoin stash. These were seized Bitcoin. David Bailey was the first response I see here. He said not all, but some. They stopped selling when Trump announced support. So it sounds to me like they sold a lot of Bitcoin at the very least, maybe not all of it. Tony, when will China regret this? How quickly?
It was very surprising to read that, by the way, because I don't know where these people have been living under a rock for so long, considering Germany, did that complete blunder not that long ago. And everybody was buzzing around this, how they missed out on an opportunity of a lifetime. And yet they're going ahead to do this. Either they're sort of like living under the delusion that if they get rid of it, somehow it won't exist anymore, or it'll just disappear and go away. I don't know what kind of craziness goes through their heads. But when they realized that Trump wasn't backing down and he was actually, following through with making America the number one Bitcoin and crypto, nation of the world, they paused. But, I guess that would explain why we had a momentary dip amongst all the bullish news that, was out the last couple of days. I was wondering, why would anybody, want to dump their coins, considering everything that is expected to be announced, imminently? Well, now we understand. 30 billion is a lot. Is a lot of money, and so if they were actually selling them, and I believe they did, at least a large portion of it, there's your answer. But the good news is it got gobbled up in no time. So there's another, dummy of the year, right after Germany.
What's amazing to me is I remember people saying after Germany sold, I remember people saying, why would you sell a hard asset for something that you can print, right? And I thought, okay, that's a good point. It didn't really resonate until I look at the order of magnitude that China is operating on now, 194,000 Bitcoin for a currency that they can literally press print on. To me, China's been a bit more strategically savvy in many cases. This is mind-blowing to me. I have no idea whose decision that was or what they're thinking. Rick, what do you think?
not that surprised. You know, I kind of remember, I've reached this place where I don't realize, I don't understand why people don't recognize that politicians are dumb. Like, they're really, really dumb. Like, we are led by some of the weakest amongst us. I don't know if anybody watched like any of the sort of clips from Davos and all this World Economic Forum nonsense that went on recently. But there was a world leader on stage there, and the question of Bitcoin and crypto, whatever, came up. And man, the questions this guy was asking, he was like, well, why can't we use apples as a reserve? Why can't we use beef or lamb or mutton as a reserve? I mean, this, do you see what I'm saying, right? So like you kind of, it's easy to look at a nation and think, well, you know, the people who run this big, powerful nation, they must be really clever. But I can tell you from my own experience in the UK that most of the people who run our nation are complete, absolute clowns, right? Like, really dumb. So I guess I find it funny, but not particularly surprising when a government does something that looks totally irrational and illogical. So yeah, they sold some Bitcoin, big mistake, especially, I mean, imagine, you're absolutely right. Imagine being able to print money for free, but then, you know, spend Bitcoin to get it. It defies logic. There's no point trying to figure it out or explain it. It's just really, really stupid. So, yeah, unlucky for China. I mean, sometimes I wonder, like, is this a bit of a psyop, right? Like, there must be smart people over there. These nations, they must be mining Bitcoin quietly somewhere. Like, do you know what I mean? Do they put this stuff out there on social media so everyone goes, ha ha, you idiots? But really, they're playing a bigger game. I don't know. But yeah, who cares? I love it. I hope all the governments sell all their Bitcoin. We get cheaper prices. Let's separate money and state. Let's make the governments broke and small and stop them interfering in our lives. I'm bullish on individuals building their own Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah. By the way, I saw that clip from Davos that you were talking about. Yeah, mind blowing. I hope for that guy's sake he's playing he's playing 4D chess and, you know, trying to sound stupid. But boy, could we have had a better representative for Bitcoin up there than Brian Armstrong responding. Like, it was just such a weak, like, frustrating. I wish Pierre Richard was up there. Or no, actually, I wish Tony was up there. That's who I wish was up there.
What's wrong with the beef reserve, man?
Hey, I would take a beef reserve. The key, because it's perishable, is you just have to recycle the old out and send it to my house. I'll take the old stuff, and then you bring, new in.
Roger.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
you could freeze it, Michael. If you freeze it, then actually you're going to have to secure it with energy, and then it's kind of like Bitcoin. Same thing.
I love it. That's why I have 2 deep freezers. Alrighty. We've got, this is hilarious. The ECB pitches a digital euro as a response to Trump's crypto push. So I don't know. Do they think this is like an apples to apples exchange that they're making here? Like, Trump pushes crypto and they're now pushing for a digital euro? Like, I'm really unclear on this. But Rick, I'll let you kick this one off.
I think the reason you're unclear on this is because it just doesn't, again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? First off, you'd have to explain to me why the current euro isn't pretty digital, right? We all live in a world now where you're very rarely walking around with wads of cash on you, right? Everyone's just beeping their cards everywhere. Most of it's digital anyway. So the question has to be, well, what's the advantage of a digital euro? Why is it any better than the money that we use now that's pretty much digital? And I guess the answer is more control. I don't know. They're like small children, right? They don't think for themselves. They just follow along. I don't think they really understand what they're talking about or what they're trying to say. So,
Rick, it's because it's built on a blockchain. Because blockchain, man,
well,
come on.
Yeah, great. I mean, yeah. I can't. We've written articles on like Bitcoin, not blockchain, right? If you want to go down that rabbit hole and understand why a blockchain solves nothing unless it's coupled with all the other great benefits of Bitcoin, right? But one thing that might be interesting to mention is, this order from the US is saying we're banning central bank digital currencies. But from where I'm sitting, a stable coin is kind of potentially on the route to being a CBDC anyway. So we have almost like this false distinction between a USDT stablecoin versus, an Orwellian CBDC. But I don't see why a USDT can't become quite Orwellian. I've heard rumors. I haven't verified this, but I heard somewhere, I think the other day, someone saying that like people who worked at chain analysis companies are now moving over and getting jobs in these companies like Tether and all that sort of stuff. So just because it says in that bill that CBDCs are off the table, I think if there's a USDT and a push for stable coins, that threat is still very real and still exists.
Yeah, Tony.
No, let's be clear about something. A stable coin already is a CBDC. It just hasn't been activated or weaponized yet. But if they wanted to, it's a 5-second process. It's not that complicated. With regards to the ECB, I think these people are just in denial. They genuinely believe they're still relevant in the big picture, and that if they release something using a buzzword, digital or blockchain or whatever it may be, that somehow they're going to stay, remain in power doing, whatever it is that they've been doing all along. That's not the case. Like the game has changed significantly now. Bitcoin truly blew up the entire financial system worldwide. It has changed the game in the same way that the internet has revolutionized the world. There is no going back now. And they clearly don't like this because, as more and more people understand this, the harder it is for them to say anything intelligent. So those of us that have been in Bitcoin, that have studied money, that understand that you cannot stop peer-to-peer technology. You just can't. Once you understand this, all of this is just noise. They're just hoping there's still a large enough number of folks that understand nothing, that will just go along with whatever rubbish that they put out. And in the short term, that will still be the case. You just have to walk outside, talk to people. They have no clue about anything. Like you can't even begin a conversation with some of these folks. It's just a complete waste of time. But at some point, even they will realize that they need something else because they can't do or buy anything. It's going to come to something as simple and obvious as that to make them ask different kinds of questions. So those of us who have a head start on this, that understand what's going on, that's where I think the world will be divided. That generational wealth, the people living glorious lives, that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's going to attract a lot of attention from those on the other side where the grass isn't that green. So let's see. It should be interesting.
Yeah. So you guys know I love doing this show, but what gets frustrating sometimes is we spend a lot of time talking around one concept. The solution is just so much simpler. Buy Bitcoin, take it into self-custody. Like if you want to preserve your wealth, if you want savings for the future, if you want self-sovereignty, and so on and so forth, buy Bitcoin, put it in self-custody. Like it's really that simple. And like there's so much like people are looking for, how do I take on leverage and accumulate more? How do I, take on leverage so I can, get USDC from Coinbase? And it's like, just buy Bitcoin and take it into self-custody. That's the message. So, for anyone listening, I hope that's your takeaway when we're running circles around these topics. Alrighty, guys, last topic. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up this week. Ross Ulbricht is a free man. This is the first picture of him after leaving prison after 11 years, I think it was. So I wasn't, Rick, you probably remember when Ross was, or when Silk Road was shut down and Ross was put on trial. I'll let you give your initial comments.
Yeah, a great result. What's exciting and encouraging about this is that, it is actually quite a rare thing to see a politician deliver on their promise. And that's exactly what Trump's done. Now, I know the whole of Bitcoin Twitter had their knickers in a twist because, was it day one or was it the next day? And they're getting very impatient. But I think, give the man a chance, right? He had an inauguration and a ball to go to. So, yeah, look, as far as I'm concerned, promise kept, Ross is free. That's great. For people who don't know much about the story, just like a really brief overview, basically what Ross did was built the first kind of libertarian peer-to-peer marketplace that lived on the dark web, and you could sell all sorts of things on it, right? You could sell books. There was loads of normal things on it, but what hits the headlines is that, yes, there were drugs available on it and all this sort of stuff, because that's kind of what's going to happen on a libertarian marketplace. The whole thing boiled down to, though, like, Ross, when they sentenced him, they threw him underneath the prison, right? I can't remember the exact charges, but this guy was never going to get out, ever, right? And I suppose the main charge circulated around, he built the marketplace. But does that necessarily make him responsible for any of the illicit activity that took place on the marketplace? And a lot of people, I think, like, especially in the development community, would say that's not really fair, right? Because if someone robs your house with and uses a transit ban as a getaway, they don't go and accuse Ford Motor Company of being complicit in that. If you stab someone with a knife, the manufacturer of the knife is not necessarily in trouble. Let's not forget how much, crime is committed through the banks and things like this, right? So a lot of people, myself included, thought that the charges were totally overblown. And it was mainly, they were just trying to make an example of him, because what the state wants least, that what they're really afraid of, is you trading directly with one another without them being involved, right? Without their oversight, without them taking a cut, without them telling you what you can and can't do. So for them, they had to make an example of Ross, and sadly, that put him in quite a ridiculous, very, very difficult situation. So it's encouraging to see that, because, well, what I'm really hoping for is, what about the samurai devs, right? We all miss the samurai devs. Their contributions to Bitcoin are massive, right? Way bigger than I think most people appreciate. Like, a lot of functions in the wallets that you love were developed by them first, things like address labeling, and everyone sort of followed them. So hopefully this sets a bit of a trend now. And, the samurai guys, we can also free them, because, again, all they did was write code. They didn't launder anyone's money. They just wrote code. So very good sign. Very happy for Ross. And I hope he just enjoys some time with his family, right? And can you imagine how sweet that freedom must taste for him? So I hope he is drinking it up, lapping it up. Very, very happy for him. It's good result.
Yeah, I think a more apt analogy, even though, would be that people could understand it, are like VPNs and other, open source or proprietary privacy-oriented tools. Like, people are using that to do all sorts of insane stuff online, right? I mean, sex trafficking, like, you name it. Like, it's going on by use of privacy tools. Why aren't all of them in prison if that's the standard, of justice? So, yeah, very happy for Ross. Tony, you want to close this one out?
Yeah, of course, man. The attack on Ross was a direct attack on Bitcoin, initially. The whole premise of transacting with one another without, the involvement of the state or the bank is exactly what they attacked, at least from my lens. So by, sacrificing this poor guy, they were hoping it would send such, a disastrous message across the universe that if you touch this thing called Bitcoin, this is what happens. They failed, unfortunately at the expense of this poor guy who had to waste 11 years of his life incarcerated. But their attempt to destroy, and keep people away from Bitcoin failed spectacularly. And that's the same thing that's going on, with the Tornado Cash of samurai devs. They can't kill the tech. The only thing that they can do is attempt to scare the living daylights out of everybody to stay away from it. But even that is failing. And then here comes along someone like Trump that torpedoes all of these illegal efforts. So when he didn't release him on day one, I think this could be attributed to the anxiety of people, not believing any politician, because normally they never follow through on what they said. So because he was late, they're like, oh shit, is he one of them liars as well, right? So I think this is what was going on. Thankfully, just the very next day, everything, turned out exactly as he had announced, and life is good. I'm really happy this guy is free. And I hope everybody will just give him, the space that he needs, to reunite with his family the way he sees fit. And, I think he put out a little message that when he is ready, he has a lot to talk about. So we just have to, leave him be for the time being. And when he's ready, he will be back.
Yeah, I saw a good meme that said, man sentences Ross Ulbricht to 20 years of on libertarian podcasts. I can only imagine the fanfare he's going to experience. So yeah, I hope he takes his time and just enjoys it for now. Tony, great way to close out. For everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Go to the bitcoinway.com/podcast. As I talked about before, Bitcoin in proper self-custody, that is the way to self-sovereignty. We can help you do it. We'll hold your hand every step of the way. We also help with online privacy phones. We've got a Plan B residency option. Again, the bitcoinway.com/podcast. We'd love to schedule some time with you. Gentlemen, thank you as always. Crazy week of news. I can't wait to see what we're talking about next week.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers, Michael.
Cheers, guys.